Michael James Perry spent nearly 9 years on Texas death row, his life ticking away in a concrete cell. To understand how a troubled kid became a convicted killer, we need to rewind to the very beginning of his story, a journey marked by rebellion, broken chances, and a descent into darkness. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to be part of our growing community. And drop a comment, telling us where you're tuning in from. Michael James Perry was born on April 9, 1982, in Houston, Texas. Given up for adoption at birth by his teenage biological mother, a drug addict, he was welcomed into the home of a caring, well-off adoptive family in Texas. On the surface, his early life seemed promising: no poverty, no abuse, just a stable household with parents who tried to give him everything. But beneath that surface, something was off. Michael was a restless child, hard to control even from a young age. His adoptive parents, desperate to guide him, enrolled him in counseling programs, and sent him to reform schools, but nothing seemed to stick. By age 8, he was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and as he grew, more labels followed: oppositional defiant disorder by the end of 7th grade, and conduct disorder by 8th grade. These diagnoses hinted at a deeper issue, a pattern of defiance and impulsivity that would later spiral out of control. School was a battleground for Michael. He clashed with teachers, ignored rules, and struggled to fit in. By middle school, he was already slipping away, skipping classes and running away from home whenever he felt like it. His adoptive parents, though loving, couldn't rein him in. They tried everything: therapy, a counseling course in the Florida Everglades, even prestigious programs like Father Edward Flanagan Boys Town in 1997. But Michael rebelled harder. Just 3 months into Boys Town, he threatened to harm his house parents' children, a chilling sign of the trouble brewing inside him. He dropped out of school entirely by the end of 7th grade, choosing the streets over structure. At 15, Michael's life took a darker turn. He drifted to San Diego, California, where he found himself homeless, with no ID, no job, and no idea how to survive. "I had no clue how to look after myself," he later said. An older man took him in, offering a place to stay, but it came at a cost. Michael became a rent boy, trading his body to avoid starvation. It was a humiliating choice, but to him, it was better than dying on the streets. This experience plunged him deeper into a world of drugs and crime. He started stealing prescription pills and selling them to feed his growing addiction. His adoptive parents offered him a way back, promising a home if he got a job, but Michael refused. Instead, he returned to Texas, continuing his cycle of theft and drug use. These years of rebellion, untreated mental health issues, and exposure to a seedy underworld shaped Michael into a ticking time bomb. His defiance wasn't just teenage angst, it was a refusal to conform, a rejection of every chance to turn back. By 19, he was no longer just a troubled kid, he was on a collision course with a crime that would shock a small Texas town. What happened next would seal his fate forever. The lives of Sandra Stotler, Adam Stotler, and Jeremy Richardson were woven together by family, friendship, and the quiet rhythm of life in Conroe, Texas. Each had their own dreams, quirks, and warmth, making their loss a heartbreaking tragedy. Their paths crossed with Michael James Perry through a mix of familiarity and a cold, calculated plan that shattered their world. Sandra Stotler, 50, was a dedicated nurse at Conroe Regional Medical Center, known for her compassion and steady presence. She lived in the upscale Bentwater subdivision near Lake Conroe, a gated community that felt like a safe haven. Sandra was a mother figure not just to her adopted son, Adam, but to many in her circle. Friends described her as warm and generous, always ready with a smile or a batch of homemade cookies. On October 24, 2001, she was baking in her kitchen, likely planning for Adam's return from the skate park. Her life was full: work, family, and small joys like tending to her home. She dreamed of a peaceful future, perhaps retiring to enjoy time with her family. Sandra had no direct connection to Michael Perry, but her son Adam knew him and Jason Burkett casually, likely from local hangouts or school circles in Conroe. That fleeting link was enough for Perry and Burkett to target her home, coveting her red Chevrolet Camaro convertible. They knocked on her door that evening, exploiting her trust as Adam's acquaintances, with a plan to steal her car that would soon turn deadly. Adam Stadler, 17, was a typical teenager with a bright spirit and a love for skateboarding. Raised by Sandra in the Bentwater community, he was a high school student with a close-knit group of friends. Described as kind and loyal, Adam was the type of kid who'd drop everything to help someone out. He dreamed of finishing school and maybe pursuing something creative or adventurous. His skateboard was his outlet, a way to feel free. On that October evening, Adam was at the skate park, unaware that Perry and Burkett were already at his home, setting their sights on his mother's car. Jeremy Richardson, 18, was Adam's close friend, a young man full of potential. He was a recent high school graduate, working to carve out his path, possibly thinking about college or a trade. He loved hanging out with Adam, sharing laughs, and enjoying the carefree moments of youth. On October 24, 2001, Jeremy was with Adam, riding in Adam's Isuzu Rodeo when they returned to the Bentwater gate. He had no direct tie to Perry or Burkett, but his friendship with Adam put him in the wrong place at the wrong time. But what exactly happened that night in Conroe, and how did a plan for theft turn into a triple homicide? That's a question that haunts everyone who hears their names. On the evening of October 24, 2001, in the quiet, upscale Bentwater subdivision near Lake Conroe, Texas, everything unfolded. Michael James Perry, 19, and his friend Jason Aaron Burkett, also 19, set their sights on Sandra Stotler's red Chevrolet Camaro convertible. Their motive was simple greed. They wanted new vehicles and knew the Stotler family, through their acquaintance with Sandra's son Adam, had money and desirable cars, including the Camaro and an Isuzu Rodeo. What began as a calculated theft turned into a night of cold-blooded violence that claimed 3 lives. Around 7 p.m., Perry and Burkett drove to Sandra Stotler's home in Burkett's girlfriend's pickup truck. They initially planned to ask to spend the night, intending to steal the Camaro while the family slept. Sandra, a 50-year-old nurse, was home alone, baking cookies in her kitchen. When they knocked, she told them Adam wouldn't be back until around 9 p.m. The pair started to leave but quickly changed their minds, deciding to act while Sandra was alone. They parked the truck down the street to avoid suspicion and walked back to the house. Burkett knocked on the front door, asking to use the phone to keep Sandra occupied, while Perry slipped into the house through the garage, carrying a shotgun stolen from a Conroe resident. Perry hid in the laundry room and knocked on the back door to lure Sandra. When she approached to answer, he emerged and shot her in the side with the shotgun. She fell to the floor, still alive and struggling to move. Perry fired a second shot, killing her. Blood stained the walls and floor of the house. The two then grabbed blankets and sheets from a bed to wrap Sandra's body. Burkett ran to retrieve the truck, and they loaded her body into it. Unable to find the Camaro's keys, they drove to Crater Lake, a secluded spot in Grangerland, Montgomery County. There, they attempted to dump Sandra's body by backing the truck toward the water and braking hard, hoping the body would slide out. When that failed, they manually rolled her into the lake, covering her with sheets, sticks, and brush to conceal her. It was around 8:30 p.m. when they finished. Still determined to get the Camaro, Perry and Burkett drove to Conroe to pick up Burkett's girlfriend, Kristen Willis, from her job at Big Dog Sports at the outlet mall. The trio returned to the gated Bentwater community, but they didn't know the gate code. Knowing Adam would return soon with his gate opener, they waited near the entrance. To pass the time, they crafted a lie to lure Adam. They would claim a friend had accidentally shot himself while hunting squirrels in the woods and needed help. Around 9 p.m., Adam, 17, arrived in his Isuzu Rodeo with his friend Jeremy Richardson, 18. Perry approached them, spinning the fabricated story. Trusting his acquaintances, Adam agreed to follow them to a dirt road off Honia Egypt Road in the Montgomery Trace subdivision. Once there, all four got out of their vehicles to talk. In a sudden act, a single shotgun blast rang out. Perry and Burkett later returned to the truck alone, leaving Adam and Jeremy dead in the woods. Kristen Willis, shaken, left the scene at this point, while Perry and Burkett took the rodeo. Their plan had succeeded in part. They now had Adam's vehicle and access to the gated community, but at an unimaginable cost. The Camaro remained out of reach, but the night's violence was complete, driven by a ruthless desire for material gain. With Adam Stotler and Jeremy Richardson now dead and Adam's Isuzu Rodeo in their possession, they used Adam's gate opener to re-enter the gated Bentwater community. At the house, they searched again and found the Camaro's keys, likely overlooked in their earlier rush. They took the car, achieving their original goal of stealing the prized convertible. The investigation began 2 days later, on October 26, 2001, when Perry was pulled over for a traffic violation while driving Sandra's red Camaro. He gave police Adam Stotler's name, using Adam's wallet, and was released on bond. The next day, October 27, a fisherman at Crater Lake snagged a blanket in the water, uncovering Sandra's body. Though she wasn't yet identified, the discovery prompted police to investigate. On October 28, a coworker reported Sandra missing after she failed to show up for work at Conroe Regional Medical Center. Deputies visited her home and found bloodstains, confirming foul play. The focus quickly turned to Perry and Burkett. On October 30, a Montgomery County Sheriff's corporal spotted Adam's stolen Isuzu Rodeo at Ronnie's truck stop near the Harris/Montgomery County line. Perry, Burkett, and Willis were inside. As they tried to flee, the vehicle struck the corporal, who shot out a rear tire. The rodeo crashed, and Perry and Burkett fled on foot, carrying the stolen shotgun. They climbed a fence and ran to the nearby Wildwood Forest apartments, where Burkett lived. Police surrounded the area, forced open an apartment door, and arrested the pair. Perry, with a deep cut on his arm from the crash, was taken to a hospital for treatment. While in the hospital, Perry confessed to the murders of Sandra, Adam, and Jeremy, providing details that led police to the boys' bodies in the Montgomery Trace subdivision. He described the locations and events, information only someone involved could know. However, he later recanted, claiming the confession was coerced under physical intimidation and that he was high on drugs and alcohol. Despite this, key evidence mounted. Perry was seen driving Sandra's Camaro, his DNA was found on a cigarette butt beneath one of the victims, and Willis's testimony corroborated the timeline. Burkett also pointed to Perry's involvement, though both blamed each other. The trial in 2003 was swift and damning. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, including Perry's initial confession, the stolen vehicles, and physical evidence like blood in the truck and the shotgun. The jury convicted Perry of capital murder for Sandra's death, though they only heard about Adam and Jeremy's murders during the punishment phase. Burkett was convicted of all 3 murders but received a life sentence, while Perry was sentenced to death. The case came together through relentless police work, witness accounts, and Perry's own words, which he couldn't escape despite his later denials. Michael James Perry's nearly 9 years on Texas death row were spent in the stark, isolating confines of the Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas, a maximum security prison known for housing the state's death row inmates. The environment was grim, small, solitary cells with concrete walls, a narrow window, and a steel door with a slot for meals. Inmates lived under strict routines, confined for 23 hours a day, with 1 hour for exercise in a caged yard. Perry's days followed this rigid structure, waking early, eating basic meals like beans or processed meat, and passing time alone. He had access to books, paper, and a radio, but no television or internet. Death row's isolation meant limited interaction with others, designed to keep inmates contained and controlled. Perry's behavior in prison was a mix of defiance and introspection. He maintained his innocence, insisting he was in jail for a traffic violation when Sandra Stotler was killed, despite the evidence against him. He wrote letters and spoke to journalists, like Joanna Walters of The Guardian, through a thick glass barrier, using a phone receiver. His toothy grin and Texas drawl masked the weight of his situation, but he grew emotional when pressed about his fate. He told Walters, "It's still hard for me to believe that in 8 days the state of Texas is going to murder me," claiming he'd been beaten by police to force his confession. He never publicly expressed remorse for the murders of Sandra Stotler, Adam Stotler, or Jeremy Richardson, instead focusing on his claims of innocence, which some saw as denial or manipulation. Perry pursued multiple appeals, with his lawyers arguing new evidence showed he was already in custody when Sandra was killed and pointing to Jason Burkett as the true culprit. They also cited an affidavit from a jail inmate who claimed Burkett bragged about the killings. These efforts failed, with courts dismissing his claims due to the overwhelming evidence, including his detailed confession and the stolen Camaro he was caught driving. Perry did not openly discuss finding religion, but his final statement suggested a spiritual side, as he spoke of forgiveness and mentioned coming home to his father, who had passed away. His interactions with guards were unremarkable. He wasn't noted for violence or disruption, but neither was he a model inmate. He had limited contact with other inmates due to solitary confinement, though he likely exchanged occasional words during exercise periods. The weight of death row pressed on Perry. Alone in his cell, he faced the reality of his looming execution, yet clung to his narrative of innocence. His adoptive mother visited when she could, their bond strained but enduring. These visits were his only real connection to the outside world, a reminder of the life he'd rejected. As his appeals dwindled, the clock ticked louder, and Perry's fate became inevitable. On July 1, 2010, Michael Perry's last day began like any other on death row, but with an undercurrent of finality. He woke early in his cell at the Polunsky unit, likely around 5 a.m., as was standard. The morning was quiet, spent in solitude. He had a visitor, his adoptive mother, who came to say goodbye through the glass partition. Their conversation was private, but Perry's later words suggest it was emotional, filled with love and farewells. Around noon, he was transferred to the Walls unit in Huntsville, Texas, where executions are carried out. There, he was placed in a holding cell near the death chamber, under constant watch by guards. For his last meal, Perry requested a feast. 3 bacon and egg omelets, 3 chicken and cheese enchiladas, and 3 cans each of Coke, Dr. Pepper, and Pepsi. The meal was a small comfort, a final indulgence before the end. As the afternoon wore on, he met with a prison chaplain, though no details of their talk were shared. About 90 minutes before his execution, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected his final appeal, which had argued new evidence and pointed to Burkett. The decision crushed any last hope, and Perry was prepared for the chamber. At 6 p.m., guards led Perry into the execution room at the Walls unit, a small, sterile space with green walls and a gurney. Witnesses, including Sandra Stotler's daughter Lisa Balaun, her mother Mary Ann Bockwich, and Jeremy Richardson's brother Charles, watched from behind glass. Perry was strapped to the gurney, and 4-line inserted into his arm. When asked for his last words, he spoke clearly but with emotion. "I want to start off by saying to everyone that's involved in this atrocity that they are all forgiven by me. Mom, I love you." Sobbing briefly, he teared up, mouthed, "I love you," to his mother, and whispered twice, "I'm coming home, Dad. I'm coming home." He never acknowledged guilt or mentioned the victims. At 6:08 p.m., the lethal injection began, a combination of sodium thiopental to sedate, pancuronium bromide to paralyze, and potassium chloride to stop his heart. Perry gasped 4 times, then fell silent. He was pronounced dead at 6:17 p.m., 9 minutes later. The room was quiet, the witnesses solemn. For the victims' families, it was closure but not relief. Lisa Balaun, holding a photo of her mother, said, "When he said he forgave us, I knew justice had been served." Mary Ann Bockwich added, "We can get on with our lives now and have peace." Yet the weight of the moment lingered for all. Perry's life ended, but the questions he left behind didn't. Did he truly believe he was innocent, or was it a final act of defiance? That mystery remains, locked away with him forever. What do you think? Can someone maintain their innocence to the very end and still be guilty, Or does Perry's story make you question the truth behind his conviction? Share your thoughts below.